what up, Long Beach? Welcome back to your home for everything local sports and a special edition of Long Beach Sports Talk. As always, I am co-sports editor JJ Fiddler to my right.
Co-sports editor Mike Gardabasio, and to my right,
Tyler Hendrickson, the kid with the motor mouth, the one you should worry about. And I got to thank our sponsors right quick, Naples Rib Company and Papalucci's down on 2nd Street. They keep us fed, they keep us happy, and they keep great videos like this coming your way.
We're talking about 99 things today. Well, actually, we're just talking about one thing that has 99 things in it. Poly Compton, 99-9, and no, that's not a girls' basketball score. It's football, it's Friday night, and it was lopsided to say the least. We've seen a host of reaction from across the city, both positive and negative. We're going to go through what we heard, what you guys are saying, and then we want you to respond with how you feel about it, because in high school sports, you know, sometimes this stuff happens, man. Sometimes one team is just a lot better than the other. Unfortunately, we've seen that a lot with Compton recently. There's been talk of taking Compton out of the Moore League. Obviously, Poly just runs roughshod over Moore League football recently, so that's an issue as well. Mike, you were there, and if you have not yet seen the video, you were missing out. Because if you did see the video, you're one of almost 40,000 people who did.
I was there. I've been asked recently why I was there. I guess I should just say the truth, which is that I had a vision that this was going to be the most watched football video that we've ever done, with all the championships and state championships. There's just something about Poly Compton 2014 that just smacked of being embedded on Yahoo and Max Preps,
Talented,
and the National Federation of High School website.
Sports writer you are. Nostradamus you are not, Mike.
No, for sure. No, it was definitely one of the strangest games that I've ever been to. It was the 4th most points ever scored by Poly or any Long Beach high school, 99. I mean, it's just unreal. And yeah, there's been quite a lot of chatter out there on the streets, JJ.
So you see that score on Twitter on a Friday night if you're at a game that's not Poly Compton.
And I think like 150 people retweeted it, so
right.
A lot of people saw the score on Twitter.
The immediate reaction is, well, that seems unnecessary. That's what I got when I was at my game. People walked up to me on the sideline after my game was over and asked, why did they score 99 points?
Right. Unnecessary is probably the nicest word that many people who weren't at the game would have used. I think that's safe to say.
Yeah, I mean, there was definitely criticism, but I think a lot of people were sort of understanding, especially when people saw the video.
I think that's the key.
I think they were able to see, like, okay, there's a legitimate talent gap here, and Compton is definitely at the beginning of their rebuild and didn't have the bodies to really last that whole game, and that's what allowed Poly to really, even though it was their second, third string, they were still able to put up very quick touchdowns in that second half.
And this is not a Steve Spurrier-led Florida Gators team in the late 90s who was throwing deep balls in the fourth quarter to try to pad the stats, pad the lead, and make a win look really impressive. Well, this is a team that put their third string into the fourth quarter. They just happened to score touchdowns.
Well, it was really like the 4th or 5th string in the fourth quarter. I mean, the second string was in the second quarter. The third string played most of the third quarter. We literally saw, I think, 4 or 5 quarterbacks for Poly in this game. And they went as far down. They had 75 guys on the roster. All 75 guys played. The other thing, in addition to the score, was that some people did the math and said, okay, it was 63-9 at halftime. It was 99-9 at the end of the second half, which means there's a 2-point conversion in there somewhere. And that was the other thing that I immediately started seeing on Twitter and all over social media was, at what point did they go for 2? And then when people hear, oh, it was up 97-9, people really sort of blew up. And so I do think that the video, if this was just a newspaper world and people just read the score, I think there'd probably still be a lot more people who are upset. I think after seeing the video, so okay, the backup quarterback dropped the ball on the extra point and then sort of scrambled it out of instinct, and then his coach reamed him out on the sideline for doing that. I think it's a little bit easier to understand, okay, this wasn't like you said, a Steve Spurrier type of a thing where Poly was trying to go out and they were like trying to hang 99 points on Compton at any point.
Well, and there's always people that are going to rush to judgment just by seeing the score, and they're going to say, I'm sorry, 99 points is never excusable and never allowable.
Logistically, it's almost impossible.
Yes, it's very difficult to do, but, I mean, the fact that people would just say that without necessarily watching or understanding the circumstances, and some of the suggestions that we saw from people in comment sections that Poly should have started fumbling the ball intentionally, or taking a knee, or just punting on first down. I mean, these suggestions, I think, would be even more demeaning to your competition, and who does that really help? I mean, if we're out there to play a football game, which they were, you have to just play football. And when backups are in, what more can you really do except ask those kids to go out and play football? You weren't doing anything crazy, but I think it would have been more demeaning to just be like, oops, I accidentally fumbled it, or I'm taking a knee at midfield, or whatever.
I agree that would be more demeaning. Let's talk about that opponent for a second. Thank goodness for Elijah Asante in a situation like this. A lot of other head coaches wouldn't deal with it as classy as he has.
Well, yeah, he's a classy guy. I mean, since Tyler did the story on him and the preview on Compton, we've seen that at every step. But yeah, he could have turned Antonio Pierce's world into a structure fire pretty easily this week by just saying, hey, they're beating up on us. Hey, this isn't fair to my kids. And instead he said, because he's won games against Mater Dei. I mean, this is a guy who's coached at the highest level of football, and he understands. He said, look, I mean, what are they supposed to do? He said exactly what we just said. I mean, they're not supposed to run the ball out of bounds. I mean, our guys, I came into the game with 23 guys. I had 5 or 6 guys get hurt during the game. Do you think in the fourth quarter, down by 70, that, those kids wanted to jump in front of, a fourth-string poly player who's still bigger than them? They played, I don't want to put too much on the Compton kids. They played hard.
A fourth-string poly player who's looking at this situation as, well, here's my chance.
Right. I'm at Vets. It's Friday night.
They don't care who they're playing.
I'm on the sideline.
16-year-old kids.
They're scoring their first touchdown of their career. Exactly. Right. So, if I will say this, and I don't want to go on a Fox News-esque rant about, the quote-unquote wussification of America or something, but I will say it's been interesting to me that in a game where a team wins by 90, everyone's first instinct is to look at that team and go, what's wrong with them? As opposed to looking at, a team that loses by 90 and going, well, why isn't their school district helping this team? Where's the support to try and help this coach, who's a great coach that they've got there, who Tyler's feature documents. This guy had to jump through hoops to take a job coaching, and this is the guy that you would want if you're Compton. And this guy had to jump through hoops to take over a team that just had one of, if not the toughest season in Division I history. So to me, that's my takeaway. Isn't, well, how could Poly do this? It's, why doesn't Compton have the support that they had when we first started covering them in 2007, 2008, when they were competitive with Poly, when they were hosting more league championship games with Poly? They had talent. They had a coach that was there who was on campus that they, essentially the administration then ended up kind of screwing around to the point that he doesn't want to be there anymore. That's what I look at it as. I think, to me, unless you see video of them throwing the ball, Hail Marys up by 70 or something like that, I just don't know how the questions aren't pointed at how does a proud historic program like Compton, that school was also founded in the 1800s. How does a program with that kind of history be allowed to slide into the point that it has right now? And again, that's nothing on the kids or the coaches that are currently there, but there's been problems with that school district and with the administration at that school in previous years that have sort of allowed it to get to this point. I do think they're on the right path. I'll say this. It's kind of a funny thing that's been overlooked, but they did score first. And they did, in scoring 9 points in the first half, score more points against Poly than the entire rest of the Moore League combined did in 2013. So I thought that was kind of interesting, but I actually thought, I was impressed by what I saw from Compton in the first half. I know they were down by 60, but you kind of expected that to happen, and they definitely did show that in the future years, if they get more kids like Christian Swint, who had a 90-yard kickoff return down to the 10, they could start to get back to that point that they used to be.
Yeah, well, and like you said, Mike, it kind of was a dream hire to bring in Asante, but the problem is the district almost messed it up before it even happened. He didn't get cleared until 2 weeks before the season.
When they hired him months before the season.
Exactly. Right. So that it was, you have to take a step forward, but 3 steps back in order to take that step forward. So that is kind of the issue, and I think that's a good point. So, how long will that take? I mean, the good thing is he's having the right attitude. He didn't want to complain or, be looked at like a victim. He wanted to stay positive about the fact that his team did play hard and score those points and focus on getting better the next week. And the team was right back at it on Saturday. Well, they were practicing, lifting weights, running, and getting ready for their next week's opponent. So applause to that.
And so did the kids, too, which I was impressive. There were no cheap shots from Compton. There was no trash talk in the handshake line. I mean, those kids understood, hey, we're getting our asses kicked right now, and we're not going to take this into a dark place, which it could have. I mean, we've all been at games where a team was getting beat and the kids get frustrated and the coaches don't have control of their roster and things go south. I was very impressed with the way that team handled themselves and the way that the coach and the kids have handled themselves since then.
And then you look at this Poly team, and they are obviously very good. We talked before the season about how Antonio Pierce was going to come in here and he was going to bring this attitude that all gas, no brakes. We are going 120%. Some people noticed that
110% is not enough anymore.
Yeah, no. Some people noticed that those starters came back into the third quarter of that Compton game for one series. So people were like, why did they come back in? Well, that was the plan preseason, that every time, no matter the score, those guys come back into the second. So now we're looking at the rest of the Moore League schedule. I mean, Poly goes to Jordan tonight. Could we be looking at Poly setting a scoring record if they're just going to keep trying to score on these Moore League opponents throughout the rest of this regular season? They're almost to 150 after 2 games.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, they're on pace to do that very easily. Part of that is that when Jerry Jaso was at Poly, there was one less game. Because Cabrillo wasn't in the league yet. Those totals would have been higher at that point when they had Chris Lewis in that offense. Almost at this point, you kind of feel like they might almost have to try not to get the league scoring record, to be completely honest.
So can anything be done rules-wise? I mean, we definitely live in a football world where if it's broken, change the rules is the first reaction to everything, and I don't want that to be the case.
Or sometimes if it's not broken.
Yeah, but a lot of people don't seem to understand the rules or even know that you can't just change the rules on a whim. Some people blamed the refs for this score. That just doesn't make any sense.
I think that there's a good plan in place to handle blowouts currently. I don't think it needs to be altered. The refs ran it to a T, but sometimes against all odds, a team still scores 35 points in a third and fourth quarter where the clock is running continuously the entire time, except for stopped at injuries and touchdowns, which I think is fine. I don't think there should be. There's been so much outcry about this. I don't think you should change a rule over the only time something has ever happened. I've never seen anything like that happen. Right. But no, the refs did what their rules say to do, which is what the ref's job is. Someone mentioned, why didn't they stop it on a mercy rule? Because that doesn't exist. Unless Compton's getting so injured, which they were not. No one was down with a serious injury from Compton. You're not going to stop the game and say, I'm too embarrassed to be at this game. I mean, it's just, you don't just refs don't get to make up rules at football games. We covered Poly in 07 and 08. They won 2 CIF championships, right? Mm-hmm. 2009, they started off the season ranked number 1 in the Pac-5. And when we went to Poly to do our preview, Raul Lara looked at us with wide eyes and shook his head and go, we should not be number 1. That team then proceeded to lose 2 more league games, which the school hadn't done in a couple decades. It was a very, very difficult season for them. And the reason, which he stated then, and he knew it was going to be a problem, was they relied on their top guys the whole time in 07 and 08. Because he knew they didn't have the talent to blow teams out the way they had in 01 and some of the earlier seasons. So he said, we've got to ride these guys. And as a result, really, you had a ton of guys on the field in 09 that had never seen playing time. So, to me, we can laugh about it. Yeah, what is this kid Money, the running back number 25 for Poly, what experience does he gain from playing against Compton? He gains a lot. He gains an understanding of the play clock, of getting calls in from the sideline, and Don't you think
it's more the vets' experience than it would be a football experience if they were playing Compton? Wouldn't that be different?
But even the football, when Poly plays Bosco or goes to Grant or goes to Hawaii for the first game of next season, do you want your running back getting a play call for the first time ever in that game? That's sort of my thought, and you're not planning on playing these kids in the playoffs, so this is the time they have to get on the field. The other thing I'd point out with baseball or with volleyball is if you can't receive serve or if you can't hit the strike zone ever in baseball, that game theoretically could never end. Football, it's going to end 24 minutes after halftime ends because the clock is running.
That's true, and I don't think you necessarily need to just stop the game unless the other team forfeits. They say we have too many injuries, we're not going to play anymore.
Which is that team's right to do if they want to.
Yes, yeah. That's kind of the way out. But the referee, there shouldn't be a quote-unquote score to end it. That's what the running clock is for. And it's really only supposed to happen in the fourth quarter. The teams agreed to do it for the whole second half. So it was even more than what the rule actually states to try to get the game over with. I don't think you need a mercy rule. You're right. This happened one time. But I think the bigger issue is the gap in competitiveness between the schools.
Mike, you have obviously been on this Poly sideline more in the last few years than any other journalist, so you would know this question most. If, in the next few weeks in more league play, Poly is winning a game by 60 or 70 points and they roll into that fourth quarter with the clock running, will the experience of this week change the way Antonio Pierce and his team go after that fourth quarter?
I think no. He seems very much like a guy who makes a decision and then sticks to it. He's been successful throughout his playing career doing that. And I think as a first-year coach, if you get caught up too much in changing stuff like that, you could kind of get lost in it. So I'd be surprised if he changes it.
If you were Antonio Pierce, would you?
Probably, yeah. To be completely honest with you, I think that there's a tendency for anyone who's working in youth sports to sort of seek the path of least resistance. And professionally, I can't say that I've never done that. Where you go, well, I'll just do this because I know that otherwise I'm going to have to get phone calls and stuff like that. But I don't think that there's anything immoral about what happened. Which again, we heard from a lot of people who thought that way, then saw the video and felt differently. So
yeah, I agree. The putting the starters back into the third quarter is one of the rubs for me, just because that's something that in the moment you can decide. Well, let's be honest. Like Josh Love throwing a football in the third quarter of this 70-point game probably isn't going to change him in the Servite playoff game 2 months down the road or whatever. But that's really the only thing I would change. I wouldn't stop trying to score points. That's not football.
Right. Antonio Pierce grew up in Compton and played NFL football in New York. It's going to take a lot more than public pressure to change that dude, you know what I mean?
Well said, Tyler. Well said. We want to know what you have to say about this issue and really just high school sports fairness all across the board. Here in the Moore League, here in Long Beach, Southern California, across the nation. You let us know. We will put you on the website. Hit us up. Twitter, Facebook. Comment on the stories, send us an email, send us a text, whatever it is. This is your city. These are your sports. This is your show, Long Beach Sports Talk. Stick with us this week as we hit another full weekend of local football and local sports. Take care, y'all.